Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Myers. Welcome to this wet and drizzly special edition of Moto World. You can hear and see the rain is coming down in buckets. We're at Unadilla Valley Sports Center, New Berlin, New York, for the 41st annual running of one of the most prestigious motocross events in the world, Motocross Des Nations. With me to bring you the action from the pits, the professor of motocross, Gary Bailey. Gary, the conditions here are deplorable, but in the pits, the rider spirits are very, very high.
Well, Larry, this is the Olympics of motocross, and today we have 17 countries here. We have several national and world champions, and with this three-moto format where the riders have to run three 30-minute motos, it's going to be real interesting to see what happens.
Interesting indeed. The best riders in the world are here today. There are world champions and national champions, but as far as the fans at Unadilla are concerned, there is a champion among champions. In a professional motocross career that spans 11 years, Bob Hurricane Hanna has won more national and international motocross events than any other rider in the history of U.S. motocross. Along the way, usually brash and always outspoken, Hanna captured the hearts of motocross fans the country over, particularly at Unadilla.
Well, this race is a one-of-a-kind for me. I wait all year, every year for it, and I've missed it just a couple years from injuries, but this is one highlight of my year, you know, and the track's always the greatest, and the spectators are undoubtedly the greatest. It doesn't even compare with any other race for me.
Surprisingly, it was not until 1986 that Hanna actually won at Unadilla. Every other year, the Hurricane came close, but something, a crash, a mechanical failure, something always put Hanna out of contention. Then, at the 1986 US 250 Grand Prix, Hanna delighted the Unadilla crowd with a win. Those same fans want another one here today. At Motocross Des Nations, a team competition with three different riders on three different size machines, Hanna will ride in the 125 class aboard a Suzuki. Joining Hanna on the U.S. team, riding a 500cc Kawasaki, is Jeff Ward. Ward, from Mission Viejo, California, is a four-time U.S. national champion. Rounding out the team, five-time national champion Rick Johnson from El Cajon, California. Johnson will compete in the 250 class on a 250 Honda. We'll hear from Ward and Johnson as the event progresses, but now let's take a quick look at the competition. Two European countries figure to give the U.S. squad the most trouble. The Belgian team, with two world champions, George Jobet in the 500 class and Eric Geboers in the 250 class, will be extremely tough. Their 125 riders, Mark Belkanier, finished 9th in this year's 125 World Championship. The Dutch team is headed by former Unadilla winner Kees van der Ven. He's riding the 500 class. This year's 125cc World Champion, John van den Berg, is riding a 250 for the Dutch team. Former 125 World Champ Davy Streboes is riding the 125 class. In addition to the Belgians and the Dutch, there are 14 other countries, all with excellent riders shooting for the World Championship title that for the last 6 years has gone to the U.S. To win, they'll have to tame one of the roughest tracks in the world, Unadilla. When it's dry, it's tough and unforgiving. In its current muddy and slippery state, it borders on impossible. The first of three motos is about to get underway. In the first moto, 125s and 500s. The 250 riders watch this one from the sidelines. More about that later. The gate drops in the 41st annual Motocross Des Nations. The World Team Championship of Motocross is underway on a muddy, slippery Unadilla track. And a pile-up in the first corner. The mud already has taken its toll. Hanna on the 125 and Ward in the 500 snuck through on the inside and barely avoided that tangle. Meanwhile, number 10, Kurt Lindquist from Finland on a 500 is the leader. He's followed by number 43, Van der Ven from the Netherlands, also on a 500. And there, number 45, that's Davy Streboes from the Netherlands. He's leading the 125 class. There's Bob Hanna. He's being passed by Jobet. And look at the roost from Jobet's rear wheel. It splattered Hanna from the top of his helmet all the way down to his chest. You have got to feel sorry for the riders on a track like Unadilla in the mud and the rain out here today. Earlier, the professor of motocross, Gary Bailey, talked to Jeff Ward about the riding conditions and how he would have to adapt his riding style to fit this Unadilla track.
Well, in the rain, the goggles are really important. Make sure nothing happens to that. So you keep those on at all times. And you got to be a little more cautious because it is slippery. And being on a 500, I'd rather be on one than ride behind one. I know the roost is going to be really substantial.
And since the opening lap, Jeff Ward has been riding without goggles. That's Davy Streboes trying to pick up his bike in the slippery Unadilla mud. Strebus was the leader in the 125 class. That spill will stake up the standings. Here's the new 125 class leader, Jean-Michel Bales from France. We'll have the conclusion of Moto number 1 and more Motocross Des Nations action right after. Welcome back to Motocross Des Nations. We're on the final lap of Moto number 1. Number 3, Bob Hanna for the U.S. is currently running 4th in the 125 class. Now, 4th place under normal circumstances is not too bad, but this is team competition, and the teams from Belgium and the Netherlands are putting it all together. The Dutch rider, Kies van der Ven, is leading. Correct that, he was leading. He was just passed by Belgium's 500cc world champion, George Jobé. Jeff Ward, meanwhile, the American entry in the 500 class, has caught the leaders and is currently holding down the number 3 position. As I mentioned earlier, in all 3 motos, the classes are mixed. Scoring, though, is separate. A rider's performance in the 125 class is measured only against other 125s. For scoring purposes, points are awarded equal to the finishing positions. First place is 1 point, second place 2 points, and so on. Individual points are totaled to determine the team championship. Belgian George Jobé heads for the finish line with Kies van der Ven, the Dutch rider, in tow. Finishing 3rd in the first moto will be the U.S. entry in the 500 class, Jeff Ward. There are still bikes on the track, but it appears the front runners have secure positions, so let's take a look at the top 5 in the 500 class. George Jobé, the 500cc world champion, was the winner, followed by Kies van der Ven in 2nd, and Ward, with a tremendous effort from the middle of the pack, finished 3rd. We have just received word the top 125s have crossed the finish line. Let's take a look at those results. Our prediction of a 3-way championship battle between the U.S., Belgium, and the Netherlands is right on course. Jean-Michel Bales from France took the number 1 spot, but look at the next 3 positions. In team scoring, after the first moto, Belgium with a 1st and a 3rd, and the Netherlands with a pair of 2nds are tied for the lead. The U.S. squad with a 3rd and a 4th are within striking distance, but will have to improve their finishing positions in the next 2 motos. Gary Bailey has worked his way to the American pits and is standing by with Jeff Ward.
Jeff, the track conditions are a little muddy out there, and you had to take your goggles off in the early part of the moto. Is there anything that you can change or that the other riders can do to help that situation?
Well, just the start I got, I happened to be on the outside, and they just like 5 riders just doused me, and it hit them so hard it knocked them down. So there's the only thing I could do to see where I was going was to jerk them down, because I couldn't pull them back up, and I couldn't see anything at all. So from there on, I was just eating dirt and rocks, and I should have won, but I fell. And I'll get them next time, though.
Thank you, Jeff. Back to you, Larry.
Thank you, Gary. The second moto, 125s and 250s, are on the line with a start just seconds away. For the U.S., it's Rick Johnson, rider number 2 on the 250, and back for his second ride of the day, Bob Hanna on the 125. There goes the gate, and moto number 2 is underway. The rain is still coming down. The mud in that first corner is deep and slippery, but it looks like the entire field made it through. I believe both U.S. riders were close to the front. Earlier, we talked to Rick Johnson about the importance of being up front in a mud race.
I put a lot of emphasis on the start because if you're in front, you're the one throwing the mud. If you're behind, you're the one catching the mud. And I make a real hard effort in the beginning of the race to get myself to the front of the pack. And when I pass people, I don't mess around. I don't follow them and push them like I would on if it was just a tacky day where it's not a lot of mud.
And Rick Johnson is not messing around today. For the past 2 years, Johnson has been the dominant force in U.S. motocross, and the Honda Star taking the lead here in the second moto has shown why. That's Davy Strebus, the 125 rider from the Netherlands. He was leading the 125 class, but now Unadilla's favorite son, Bob Hurricane Hanna, takes over. That could spell disaster for the team from the Netherlands and be just the break the U.S. needs to move into contention for its 7th straight Motocross Des Nations title. Bob Hanna and Rick Johnson are leading both classes. You can bet, however, that neither rider is overconfident. The best in the world are right behind them, and they know it. That's 250 world champion Eric Gabors from Belgium breathing down Johnson's neck. Gabors' teammate and first moto winner George Jobé has moved to the edge of the track to cheer Gabors on. Earlier, Gary Bailey asked Eric Gabors why he and Jobé place so much emphasis on this event.
Just look at the past and you know why. Because the Americans have been winning 5 years now in a row, and you have to do something about it. If you have a fighting spirit, or if you're a real sportsman, you don't let go.